For decades, American transit agencies have chased one big question. Is there a bus out there, somewhere overseas, that's cheaper, lighter, and more advanced? The one that could finally save our budget. Politicians wanted cost savings. Riders wanted smooth, quiet European comfort. And managers convinced themselves that the miracle machine must already exist, just not built in America. But American streets had other plans. Winter salt in Chicago, desert heat in Phoenix, potholes deep enough to swallow a tire, and maintenance crews told to keep it running another 10 years. Those dreams didn't last long. Many of these imports were sold as the future of North American transit. What we got instead? Cracked frames, fried wiring, no spare parts, and early retirements. These are the 10 most disappointing imported buses ever to hit American roads, the ones that promised salvation and delivered repair bills. Van Hool A330, Belgium. In the early 2000s, American transit agencies fell in love with a look. The sleek, curvy, European future kind of bus. Big panoramic glass, full low floors, bright BRT-style headlights. To many city planners, it looked like progress on wheels. And no one bought that dream harder than AC Transit in California, which made the Van Hool A330 its signature ride. The idea sounded perfect. Bring in a modern European coach that would make riders feel like they were in Brussels, not Oakland. But reality had other plans. Parts were expensive. Many had to come straight from Belgium. The layout under the skin didn't match American standards. Cramped engine bays, unusual suspension geometry, and interior fittings that made quick repairs a nightmare. Mechanics grumbled. Downtime stacked up. And the long-term costs? Nowhere near the savings that the brochures promised. Transit managers imagined a high-class, cost-effective future. What they got was a fleet that required its own parts room, its own technicians, and its own headaches. To the public, the A330 looked beautiful gliding down San Pablo Avenue. To the maintenance yard, it was the bus everyone prayed not to draw on their shift. NABI 60, BRT 60 LFW, Hungary, USA. At the dawn of the 2000s, Los Angeles Metro was chasing the future. They wanted a fleet that looked fast, modern, and green. Something that would make the new bus rapid transit lines feel like rail on rubber tires. The answer seemed to come from overseas. NABI, a Hungarian company building buses in Alabama to meet Buy America rules. The 60 BRT and 60 LFW looked like science fiction. Smooth body panels, low floors, and a lightweight frame that promised better fuel efficiency. On paper, it was everything a modern city wanted. Then the cracks started, literally. Structural fatigue near the articulation joint, heat-related stress, and strange noises from panels that began to squeak and rattle after only a few years. Mechanics struggled with uneven quality, odd parts, and premature corrosion. Transit officials had been sold a dream, light rail experience for half the cost. What they got was complex maintenance, body shells that didn't age well, and repair bills that quickly ate away any savings. To riders, they looked futuristic, gliding through the San Fernando Valley. To the men in the maintenance pits, they were fragile giants, elegant from afar, exhausting up close. Orion VII Hybrid, early generation, Canada, Germany. In the early 2000s, big city transit agencies like New York City Transit and the Toronto Transit Commission dove headfirst into the hybrid revolution. Diesel-electric technology promised cleaner air, lower fuel bills, and a greener public image, all without switching to bulky CNG fleets. The Orion VII Hybrid was marketed as the bus of tomorrow, quieter, smoother, and smarter. On paper, it made perfect sense. In reality, the technology just wasn't ready. Those early Allison and BAE hybrid systems were complex, full of proprietary parts, and ran hot, too hot. Battery packs wore out faster than expected. Control units failed under heavy use, and software updates turned into service nightmares. The lifetime cost savings that had looked so good in the brochures simply evaporated on the streets. Transit agencies thought they were buying the European-Canadian future of clean urban mobility. What they really bought was the first-generation experiment. Drivers loved how quietly it moved compared to the old two-stroke Detroit diesels. But in the maintenance shops of New York and Toronto, hybrid quickly became a dirty word. The sound of budget headaches, overheated components, and sleepless nights under a bus that was supposed to save the world. Nova Bus LFS, first generation, Canada, mid-1990s. In the mid-1990s, Canada's Nova Bus rolled out what was supposed to be the next big step in North American transit, the low-floor series, or LFS. For decades, buses had steep rear steps and high floors that made boarding a chore. The LFS promised something bold and European: full low-floor access, airy interiors, and a modern, rounded design that looked light years ahead of those boxy 1980s workhorses. Transit agencies lined up, thinking this was the future: ADA-friendly, efficient, and standardized. But the first generation didn't live up to the dream. Structural fatigue showed up early. Corrosion crept into critical joints. The engine bay was so cramped that basic service jobs took twice as long. Build quality? Rough at best. Panels loosened, interiors rattled, and warranty claims piled up. Many agencies quietly admitted that their early LFS fleets felt more like prototypes than production buses. Vehicles expected to last 12 years were sidelined in half that time. Ironically, later versions of the LFS became some of the most dependable buses on the continent. But those early models, the awkward, unreliable firstborn, are still remembered by old-school mechanics as Nova's teenage years, when growing pains nearly broke the company's promise. Volvo B10M, the Americanized Volvo. In the late 1980s and early 90s, a handful of North American transit agencies decided to experiment with Swedish engineering. The Volvo B10M, a mid-engine chassis known across Europe for its smooth ride and tank-like reliability, looked like the perfect import. After all, who wouldn't want a bus built by the same folks who made the world's safest cars? On paper, it sounded ideal: a durable frame, quiet drivetrain, and Scandinavian efficiency. But when these buses hit American streets, the problems weren't mechanical, they were cultural. The Buy America regulations made importing parts a bureaucratic maze. Maintenance manuals came in metric and translation errors. Mechanics used to rear-engine layouts had to relearn everything from access panels to cooling systems. And with so few units in service, stocking spares became expensive and slow. It wasn't a bad bus. In fact, in Stockholm or Oslo, the B10M was a legend. But dropped into Cleveland or Minneapolis, it became an orphan, too rare to support, too foreign to thrive. The lesson was harsh but clear. Durability doesn't matter if you can't keep it running in your own garage. Even the best machine needs a home that understands it. Optima Opus, Italian design, assembled in the US. At first glance, the Optima Opus looked like something straight out of Milan: compact, curvy, and distinctly European. It wasn't a hulking city bus. It was a stylish, mid-size, low-floor designed for tight downtown streets, university campuses, and circulator routes. With its rounded front, light body, and full ADA accessibility, it promised to bring a touch of continental charm to American transit. City planners loved the concept. Here was a bus that looked premium, friendly, and efficient. A middle ground between a van and a full-size 40-footer. But reality was far less graceful. The supply chain was thin, parts were often delayed, and when Optima changed ownership, things only got worse. Mechanics quickly discovered that the Opus wasn't built for the punishing American duty cycle. 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, over cracked pavement and steep curbs. Frames aged early, components wore out fast, and the hoped-for 12-year service life turned into 6 or 7. Transit agencies had bought a European boutique bus and found out they needed a new flyer, not a novelty. By the end, many Opus units finished their careers quietly shuttling employees or tourists, far from the busy city routes they were meant to conquer. Dina Viaggio GV 1000, Mexico based on Marco Polo, Brazil. By the late 1990s, America's intercity operators were looking south for savings. Coach USA, Greyhound affiliates, and several Trailways carriers began testing a new import from Mexico, the Dina Viaggio GV 1000, a sleek Brazilian-inspired touring coach built under license from Marco Polo. It looked impressive: tall stance, curved windows, plush seating. On paper, it promised the comfort of a luxury highway coach at a fraction of the price of a Prevost or MCI. But those savings came with strings attached. Mechanical reliability quickly became a sore spot. Electrical faults, suspension issues, and structural weaknesses that couldn't stand up to America's long-haul punishment. Interior trim loosened, panels rattled, and systems designed for South American climates struggled in the Arizona desert or Michigan winters. Parts availability was another nightmare. Few U.S. suppliers stocked components, and warranty support lagged across the border. For operators, the math turned sour fast. The money saved up front was eaten alive by downtime, shipping delays, and constant repairs. Trailways fans still remember the GV 1000. Not fondly, but vividly. They'll tell you, "Yeah, I remember those buses, and I don't want to remember them again." It was a lesson written in oil stains. Buy cheap, pay twice. Crown-Ikarus 286 articulated, Hungary, USA. During the 1970s and 80s, America began flirting with the idea of articulated buses, those long, bend-in-the-middle machines that were already common in Europe. To jumpstart the movement, California's Crown Coach joined forces with Hungary's Ikarus, adapting the Ikarus 286 for the North American market. It was meant to deliver European capacity without waiting years for U.S. manufacturers to catch up. At first glance, it seemed like the future. Roomy interiors, a lower floor than typical American high-rises, and sleek European styling. But reality hit hard once they started pounding through city routes. The 286 rusted faster than anyone expected. Corrosion crept into the frame and body seams. Electrical gremlins plagued doors, lights, and heaters. Build quality varied wildly, and the buses simply couldn't handle the brutal stop-and-go punishment of big U.S. cities. Transit agencies wanted a taste of European sophistication. What they got was a fleet that needed constant triage just to stay in service. For many older transit fans, the Crown-Ikarus remains a vivid childhood memory. Those long, bending buses that looked futuristic but spent too much time sidelined. They were America's first shot at going articulated, and one of its most painful lessons. Neoplan AN459, Mega Transit Coach, Germany, USA. In the 1990s, Neoplan promised to bring a touch of European sophistication to American streets. Originally a German company with a reputation for sleek, high-tech coaches, Neoplan set up shop in Colorado to build buses that could meet U.S. regulations while keeping that German precision. One of its stars was the AN459, a futuristic-looking commuter and airport-style bus with a high, complex drive axle and space-age design. Transit agencies were smitten. Here was a bus that looked ready for the 21st century. Lightweight materials, panoramic glass, and driver ergonomics that felt straight out of Stuttgart. But under the glamour lay trouble. The AN459's mechanical layout was overly complicated, with suspension systems that baffled even experienced mechanics. Structural cracking became a recurring nightmare, and quality at the Colorado plant didn't always live up to the German engineering reputation the brochures bragged about. Some agencies quietly retired their fleets years ahead of schedule. Others cannibalized parts just to keep a few units running. To drivers, the Neoplan was a joy. Big windows, a commanding view, a feeling of luxury behind the wheel. But to the maintenance crew, it was a diva. Beautiful, expensive, and always one breakdown away from heartbreak. NABI 40C, LFW CompoBus, Hungarian tech, composite frame for LA. In the early 2000s, Los Angeles Metro was obsessed with the idea of a bus that would never rust. NABI, North American Bus Industries, offered what sounded like a miracle. The CompoBus, a transit coach built with a lightweight composite body instead of traditional steel. It was supposed to be cleaner, lighter, and immune to corrosion. The future of the all-American city bus, powered by clean-burning CNG. The promise was irresistible. No steel, no rust, less weight, better mileage, longer life. But the reality hit hard. The composite shells were expensive to make and impossible to repair easily. When one cracked, you couldn't just weld and hammer it straight. The supply chain stretched across the Atlantic, clashing with strict Buy America funding rules. Federal drama followed, and production stumbled. Many CompoBuses were quietly retired years before their projected lifespan. What was meant to be a technological leap turned into a cautionary tale, proof that real-world fleets aren't the place to beta test unproven materials. Still, anyone who lived in Los Angeles back then remembers them. Those smooth, cream-white buses with the rounded space-age look. Hard to miss on the boulevard, even harder to keep alive. Every bus on this list came with the same confident promise. We've solved the problem overseas. All you have to do is buy the answer. But America isn't a friendly proving ground. Its streets are cracked and brutal. The weather swings from desert heat to frozen salt. Maintenance budgets run thin, yet the buses run 18 hours a day. Federal laws, Buy America, liability rules. It's a gauntlet no spreadsheet can capture. On paper, these imports looked like progress. On the road, they met reality. And reality always wins. Some buses were built to win contracts. Others were built to survive. Very few managed to do both. Have you ever ridden one of these imports? Tell us your story. Like if you've heard a foreign frame creak under American weight. Subscribe for the next chapter, 10 imported buses that actually worked.